Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful. My name is Ibrahim Hooper. I'm CARE National Communications Director. Thank you for coming today. We're here to offer the American Muslim and other communities' perspective on the ongoing assault on Gaza and the call for the pursuit of peace by not only the international community but our own nation. Our first speaker will be CARE's National Executive Director, Nihad Awad. That's Nihad Awad, CARE National Executive Director.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be to you. Just to introduce myself, I usually appear as the National Director of CARE. Not many people know that I am a Palestinian, and I would like to start my statement by putting things in context. I am one of those Palestinians who have been born and raised in a refugee camp after my family was ethnically cleansed out of Palestine in 1948, like 750,000 people then. Some of these people who were forced out in 1948, they ended up, like my family, in different countries, including within Palestine itself, including the Gaza Strip. So we have family members in so many places as a result of the violence, the ethnic cleansing that was committed against our people because of who we are, the owners and the indigenous population of the land. So history did not start on October 7th, when the violence broke out, when Palestinians broke free from the largest open-air prison in the world. The largest open-air prison in the world has been described as such by a president of the United States, Jimmy Carter. This prison has been also under siege from air, land, and sea, where 2.3 million Palestinians, mainly refugees, have been living the harshest conditions a person can live. They have been surrounded by settlements, illegal settlements, and foreign military occupation, that's the Israeli occupation. For so many decades, Palestinians in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and even Palestinians in what they call proper Israel, 1948, have been subjugated to all kinds of violence, discrimination, ethnic cleansing. This past year alone, 240 Palestinians were killed. Many children, women, and men. The illegal settlers, aided by the extremist Netanyahu government, have been invading towns, have been killing Palestinians, have been burning olive trees, farms, and so many acts of violence against the Palestinians. They have been invading the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and they have been desecrating the mosque and other churches. The Israeli government soldiers last year gunned down an American Palestinian journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh. Before that, a Palestinian American, Omar Assad, was violently killed and left in a building. What has our government done? You and I know nothing. The humanity of the Palestinians did not matter to our government or our president. I heard the speech of President Biden a few days ago. And let me address the president. Mr. President, you're not helping. Your statements are adding fuel to the fire. By sending weapons to Israel, by dehumanizing the Palestinians, by not recognizing their humanity in your speech, by parroting the Israeli propaganda talking points. You are not helping. You are in fact giving the green light for Israel to commit a genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity. You failed us as American citizens, you failed us as Palestinians, and you failed the world community. You have been aiding the Ukrainian people, rightly so. There is no difference between the Ukrainian people and the Palestinian people. Both, they were invaded by foreign military occupation forces. Why the Palestinian people are different? Because you said it yourself many years ago when you were a US Senator. You said if there was no Israel, we have to invent an Israel. So to you, Israel is a project. And that's dangerous. You are playing with the lives of Israelis and Palestinians alike. And I hope and pray that you will wake up to this reality, that you will do your best to protect human lives, both Israelis and Palestinians. You have ignored the fact that there are also hundreds of Palestinian American US citizens in Gaza. They are trapped. They have not been receiving any help. You are endangering their lives. We as Muslims and Palestinians and Americans, we believe that every human life is valuable and is sacred and has to be protected. We call on you, Mr. President, to put an end to this violence. You have the ability and power to prevent a mass crime and genocide from happening. You have a few days or less. You have that power. Let me address the media. What happened to journalism? What happened to two sides? I have been watching some of the television networks. They bring Israeli supporters and Israeli guests wall to wall. It's important to show both sides. What about the Palestinian side? What happened to the principle of independently verifying news? You parroted the Israeli talking points, and you are also adding fuel to the fire. Stop dehumanizing the Palestinians. And to our members of Congress and elected officials and public officials, stop dehumanizing the Palestinians. Stop comparing them to ISIS. Stop giving the green light for the Israeli army to commit a genocide against the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are the occupied people. They're not the occupiers. Don't blame the victims. Don't fail us as Americans. We need you to establish peace based on justice. So we call on you to commit to holding Israel accountable. Now, as I conclude, young people do not believe in the media now. Young people seek their information from the internet, and they see the other side. And we call on our fellow Americans to contact the White House, to ask them to stop this madness, and call on their elected officials, representatives, and call for an end to supplying Israel with our tax dollar money, and stop supplying Israel with weapons of mass destruction. Now we hear that Israel is using illegal weapons on Gazans. Where is the media? We have been hearing reports from our community, and I will let my colleague Zainab to focus on this. Harassments of Muslim students, Palestinian students, intimidation against communities. We can have free debate. We can agree to disagree, but we have to do it peacefully, respectfully. I hope that our call is heard, and we are here to offer support. If we can do as American Muslims anything to help bring this violence to an end, we should and we can. Finally, and most importantly, we condemn the attacks on civilians on either side. Both civilian lives are important and are sacred. Do not continue to ask the Palestinians to condemn the violence, because the assumption is that Palestinians do not believe in saving civilians' lives. This is dehumanization, this is racism, and this is Islamophobia. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chris Habibi, National Government Affairs and Advocacy Director for the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, ADC, and if you could spell your name.
Thank you. And like you mentioned, my name is Chris Habibi. That's Habiby. I'm the National Government Affairs and Advocacy Director for ADC. I'm also the son of 2 Palestinian immigrants, and my heart breaks daily and has been breaking daily for years now. So first and foremost, an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire is the only way to prevent the further loss of life. The U.S. has an obligation to demand that Israel stop committing war crimes and resume the supply of water, electricity, fuel, humanitarian assistance. But instead, what our government is doing, our elected leaders, are perpetuating Israeli lies, calling for a religious war, and openly advocating for the destruction of the second most densely populated place on planet Earth. Now, in the U.S., this has led to a culture of fear for our communities. More arrests have been made as a result of anti-Palestinian attacks than anti-Semitic attacks. In New York City, they're waving the flag of a Jewish terrorist organization that bombed ADC offices and killed our Southern California Regional Director, Alex Ode. ICE is detaining Palestinians. The FBI is visiting mosques, community centers. A teen in Tampa had his orbital bone broken by an anti-Palestinian protester. And he almost was arrested instead of the people that attacked him, and the only reason he wasn't was because there was a movement lawyer steps away. We've heard reports of people being fired for having a Palestinian flag on their car. Palestinian students are being sent home from school for wearing a keffiyeh. This is just absolutely horrific, and it needs to stop. And we need our elected leaders to stand up and remember the humanity of people, humanity of Palestinians. This is not a one-sided affair here. We need to do better. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Aya Ziada, Advocacy Director for the American Muslims for Palestine and Americans for Justice in Palestine Action. And if you could spell your name, too.
I'm a little bit taller, so I have to move this. My name is Aya Ziada, that's Ziyadeh. I stand here before you as a Palestinian American as well. I come from 2 Palestinian immigrants whose families and parents were also exiled following the Nakba in 1948. To say I'm exhausted and devastated is beyond means. I don't even have the words to describe what this week has felt like, but certainly it's not the same kind of devastation and exhaustion that my Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza or the West Bank are experiencing at the hands of Israel's apartheid system. Following Sunday's attacks, Israel, with the help of our own country, pumped out reckless propaganda of Hamas beheading children and raping women. And while the information was debunked, the costs have already been paid, and they've been grave. As of this morning, the latest estimated number of deaths is more than 1,537 Palestinians in Gaza, including 500 children and 237 women. 1/3 of this death toll is children. And yet very little condemnation has come from our elected officials and our administration. In this moment, the US government has proven that its moral compass ends at its allyship with Israel, and that a relationship with the apartheid government is worth more than Palestinian lives. The misinformation that has been amplified by our very own president has paved the way for mass atrocity and genocide before our own eyes as the world watches. Lawmakers on the left and the right, as we've witnessed this week, from Lindsey Graham to Richie Torres, have used the opportunity to demonize Palestinians in order to cultivate anti-Palestinian hatred, which has given Israel cover to openly commit its horrendous crimes. We demand the US government to call for immediate de-escalation and ceasefire, which includes calling for humanitarian assistance, the establishment of safe zones in the Gaza Strip, safe passage of humanitarian aid and medical supplies, as well as resuming access to water and electricity and fuel for medical facilities in the Gaza Strip. The root causes of this violence is clear. It is decades of Israeli military occupation and apartheid and US complicity in this systematic oppression, and our government must address this. What is occurring right now is not war. Let us be clear. What is happening right now and what the media is spreading is not war. This is decades of occupation. This is mass murder, and this is going on the brink of genocide. Israel, much like it's done for decades, is actively committing the war crime of collective punishment and targeting civilians. They've been carpet bombing entire neighborhoods and cities in Gaza, dropping over 6,000 bombs in only a few days. That's more bombs than the US dropped on Afghanistan in a few days. While it's been under siege for 16 years, Israel has imposed an entire, complete siege on Gaza, meaning it's cut off all food supplies, electricity, water, and fuel. People are no longer hearing from their families. Hospitals are completely running out of resources and have been called graveyards at this point. Right now, over 340,000 Palestinians have been displaced in the Gaza Strip, and over 220,000 are sheltering in 92 UN schools, which have been turned into shelters. Pending Israel's evacuation order last night for the entire northern strip of Gaza, telling 1.1 million residents to evacuate south of Wadi Gaza, we are on the brink of witnessing genocide, and as a nation, we're enabling it. Giving Netanyahu and his extremist government, which President Biden himself has described as the most extreme Israeli government he has seen in the last 50 years, more weapons, diplomatic immunity, and political support as he has this week, is throwing a match into a dry hayfield, and that's exactly what we've seen unfold. A ceasefire and de-escalation must be demanded of the Israeli government immediately. Otherwise, the blood of the atrocities that have been committed and the genocide that is about to unfold will be on the American government's hands. Thank you.
And finally, we'll hear from Zainab Chowdhury, CARE spokesperson and director of our Maryland office. And if you could spell your name.
My name is Zainab, Zainab, Chaudhry, Chaudry. Over the last several days, our office in Maryland has received several complaints from students, high school and college, Muslim and Arab, reporting unprovoked incidents in which strangers have taken their photos, unlawfully recorded videos without permission, shouted racial slurs, threatened to submit their private information to doxing sites, committed hostile messages, commented hostile messages on social media platforms, and otherwise created a hostile situation after the students affirmed their support for basic Palestinian human rights. In some cases, this was not the fact that the students had indicated that they supported Palestinian human rights. They simply were visibly Arab or Muslim. In this politically charged environment, many Muslim and Arab students feel increasingly vulnerable and targeted because of their diverse identities. We are urging all secondary and post-secondary institutions, not just across Maryland, but across the country, to take immediate measures to create and maintain a safe environment in which students are free to respectfully express their support for basic rights to freedom and liberation for Palestinians existing under an illegal occupation without being subjected to hate, retaliation, and fear. School officials and public safety officials have a responsibility to take these measures immediately to make sure that students are free to be able to express themselves without being afraid for their safety and security. We condemn the growing reports of Muslim and Arab students who are experiencing harassment and intimidation in public high schools and on college and university campuses. We're calling on administrators and officials within all educational institutions to take swift measures to promote student safety and to take appropriate corrective action as necessary to discourage these kind of incidents. Doxing means putting people's personal information or intimidating them out into the sharing people's personal information or intimidating them. We received reports, for example, of mobile billboards that have targeted students at Harvard University's campuses, and this is egregious and unacceptable. We stand in solidarity with all those who are fighting for liberation and dignity and humanity, for those who are oppressed and our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and we pray for their safety and security.
And just by way of information, we've already recorded anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian hate crime in Massachusetts, hate vandalism there, 2 anti-Palestinian assaults in New York, and just this morning, we are still working on this. A pro-Palestinian protester was allegedly struck by a vehicle during a protest by an individual shouting slurs. We're still investigating this, and we'll have something on that hopefully later today. You can always go to our website, cair.com, cair.com, and ADC is
adc.org.
adc.org and
agpaction.org and ampalestine.org. amp.org.
amp.org. And thank you for coming, and all of our speakers are now available for one-on-one interviews if you so desire. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.